This is Matthew Cratter from Trade University, and today I want to talk about Palantir, gold bars, and black swans. A lot of you have been sending me this article about how Palantir bought some gold bars as a hedge against a black swan event. It looks like they spent almost $51 million on 100-ounce gold bars just this month. So I should say before I begin, I have a bunch of disclaimers for this particular company. I was an early investor in Palantir. I know all of the founders personally. I should also say, though, that I no longer own any shares of Palantir, and I've not discussed this gold purchase or any other Palantir news with anyone at Palantir or with Peter Thiel or the other Palantir founders. So with that out of the way, we can take a look at the financial statements. The quarterly report was just released a couple weeks ago, and buried deep inside of that was this announcement from Palantir itself, and this was of course reported to the SEC. During August 2021, the company purchased $50.7 million worth of 100-ounce gold bars. Such purchase will initially be kept in a secure third-party facility located in the northeastern United States, and the company is able to take physical possession of the gold bars stored at the facility at any time with reasonable notice. Now, this really raises quite a few questions. The first one that immediately comes to my mind, and if you're a gold bug, I'm sure it comes to your mind as well. Palantir is headquartered. It's based in Denver, Colorado. So it's very strange to be storing the gold in the northeastern United States, which is quite far away from Denver. And also, as part of this, Palantir is taking on counterparty risk. They're relying on a third-party custodian. You can imagine a black swan takes place and Palantir gets on the phone and says, hey, something incredibly bad just happened. Could you load up our gold onto trucks or a jet and fly it out to us? What if the phone call goes straight to voicemail? What if the company says you didn't give us reasonable notice? And of course, that's written here in the SEC filing at any time with reasonable notice. The other really strange thing, besides the fact that they are not physically holding the gold themselves, or at least it appears that they're not. It appears they're relying on a third-party custodian. But the other really strange thing is just the amount. It's a very, very small amount of gold. A $50 million investment for a $50 billion company is really tiny, unless you expect something to go up quite a bit. So my second question would be, are they buying more? Is this just an initial purchase, and as their earnings come in, or as their cash flow comes in, I'm not sure they have earnings at this point, will they be diversifying into things like gold and Bitcoin? I know they've been buying some SPACs recently, which has been publicly disclosed. But really, what's the whole point of owning gold, especially physical gold? This is very, very unusual for a major public corporation to be buying physical gold if they're not in the gold business. If they're especially, this is very strange and very unusual for a software business to be doing this. And so if they are doing it, why aren't they holding the physical gold themselves? If you're finding this video helpful so far, I'd encourage you to hit that subscribe and like button. Also share the video with a few friends. So gold obviously is something that could be useful if the internet goes down for a prolonged period of time. Everyone knows who's been watching my channel that I'm not a huge fan of gold. I believe that it's been made outdated by Bitcoin, which is basically gold 2.0. It does everything that gold does, but does it better. The one thing, if the internet goes down for an extended period of time, it would be gold might make more sense, at least for a short period of time before the internet comes back up. It might make more sense than Bitcoin. For Bitcoin, there are satellites. Blockstream has a satellite that keeps track of the blockchain. I'm not sure how mining would work, though, in a situation where the internet goes down. Of course, if the internet goes down for an extended period of time, we're going to have much bigger problems than just trying to update or move our Bitcoin. The other thing about gold is it's very difficult to store, it's difficult to hide, it's difficult to transport. And even if you have a nice gold bar and the black swan hits and the apocalypse hits, what are you going to do? Are you going to shave off little bits of it when you go buy food? It's just a very impractical thing. It might make sense to have a few gold coins, but I think what makes a lot more sense are having having some sort of homestead, having some sort of retreat where you have fresh water that you control, vegetable garden, chickens, cows, and what we might call self-defense tools. These are much more important ultimately. If you're going to hold something physical, I think these will have more value than gold. It doesn't do you any good as well if you have a bunch of gold coins and no one is willing to accept them for the things that you really need, which is food, water, and self-defense. It was interesting, though, a good reminder, though, that Palantir now accepts customer payments in Bitcoin. They're willing to accept Bitcoin in exchange for their software subscriptions. They, as far as I can tell, they haven't had any customers take them up on this, but they are open to Bitcoin. And the CFO, David Glazer, was quoted in this Bloomberg article saying that the company is debating whether to use some of its company cash to also purchase Bitcoin. So this move into gold may be the first step of a sort of diversification. They say that the COO, Shyam Sankar, says that they accept Bitcoin. It reflects more of a world view. You have to be prepared for a future with Black Swan events. So both gold and Bitcoin really fit into this mentality. That being said, I would say that there's actually not even worrying about black swans. There's a big white swan happening that most people don't seem to care about, even though they're watching all this inflation hit the economy. They're watching their grocery bills go up. They're watching the price of housing skyrocket. This big white swan, which we can see happening and which has happened many times at the end of fiat currency regimes, is we're seeing an active debasement of the US dollar by the US central bank, which is the Federal Reserve. And so it does make sense if you're a corporation, do you really want to hold a lot of US dollars or euros or yen or any other fiat currencies which are also being devalued by their central banks against real things? Do you really want to hold cash when it's being actively debased by the Fed? Do you want to hold treasuries? Do you want to hold corporate bonds? Anything that does not provide a return that's higher than the rate of debasement means that you're going to lose purchasing power. This, of course, is why we've seen over the past year or so, we've seen MicroStrategy, Tesla, Square, among many other companies buying Bitcoin and adding it to their balance sheet, to their treasury reserve assets. Smart companies do not want to hold fiat currency. So it makes sense that Palantir is diversifying a small amount of its cash. This is, again, a very small amount for a company that holds something like $2 billion worth of cash. Palantir is also very far from turning itself into a gold trust. So this isn't a similar situation as something like MicroStrategy, where it's moved. MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor have moved the bulk of their treasury reserves into Bitcoin. This is very different. Maybe Palantir does increase their gold purchases in the future, but so far it's a really small amount. And we can see that. Let's say that gold goes up 10x in the next few years, in the next decade even, which I view as very, very highly unlikely. Gold has been actually performing very, very badly over the past 10 years. It has not kept up with US dollar debasement. But let's say that the gold bugs are right. Let's say gold goes up 10x in the next few years. That $50 million that Palantir invested in gold becomes $500 million. And even at that inflated level, or that appreciated level, that's still just 1% of the current $50 billion market cap. And so at these levels, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me why Palantir has gold. But again, they may decide to increase it. The other thing that people have been reading into this article is Palantir obviously is sort of a spy software company. They provide a lot of tracking and management of data for many government programs. So is this a signal that Palantir is telling us that they know about some black swan, that event that's about to happen, that they can see through their data analysis? Possibly. Of course, by definition, a black swan is not something that we can see coming. Maybe you could sell a black swan that Palantir sees coming. That being said, again, the amounts and the fact that they're buying gold, very strange, and it really does open up more questions than it answers. What sort of black swans? Well, these aren't really black swans because a lot of people are talking about them. They still could be quite devastating for the world economy. China possibly invading Taiwan after the Olympics early next year in 2022. We've talked about that. I think that's reasonably possible, and it's definitely on China's to-do list. Some sort of EMP attack, whether initiated by China or some other country or group, maybe even a huge cyber attack. If you think a huge cyber attack is coming, it might make sense to own gold. If you think the internet is going to be down for a long period of time, again, I think it makes more sense to own food, water, and self-defense tools. That being said, a lot of people have called my attention to Klaus Schwab and his predictions of a cyber attack. And so this could be something, this could be a false flag, this could be a planned cyber attack, it could be a real cyber attack. It's very hard to know, especially with shadowy figures like Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum. Not exactly the most trustworthy or transparent group of people. A lot of people may know that Peter Thiel's father, I believe he was a chemical engineer. He also worked for various mining companies in South Africa and other parts of Africa. So it would make sense if Peter and his friends have an interest in gold. That being said, I want to draw your attention to a podcast from earlier this year with Peter, which I will link to, in which he says, they ask him, what would be your favorite investment for the next decade? And his answer was, the one asset that I most strongly believe in, my candidate for the one investment that is so big and so stupid. And here he compares it to the last 10 years. What could you have done 10 years ago that would have been very obvious? It wouldn't have been very creative, but it would have made you more money than possibly anything else. That would be holding the FANG stocks. If you bought the FANG stocks in 2010 or 2011, you just held them, you didn't trade around them, you just watched them grow and held on to them. That would have been the best no-brainer investment. And he says for the coming decade, that is Bitcoin, the one asset he most strongly believes in. So I'll link to this interview with Peter. It's definitely worth listening to. Like any interviews he does, they're very, very smart. He's definitely the smartest guy that I know. Of course, the question will come up now, should you own Palantir? I would say that obviously I don't own Palantir anymore. I had a very low cost basis because I was a very early investor, and so I sold when it became public. But that being said, I do think I'm very bullish on Palantir. I think it will do quite well over the coming decade. It will definitely outperform things like the triple Qs or the S&P 500, the SPY. That being said, I do think that Bitcoin will do much, much better. Maybe Palantir goes up 2x or 4x or something like this. Bitcoin is going to go up many more x than that, 10x, 20x, 40x. Again, not investment advice, just my opinion. And this is, you can see it in the actions I've taken where I sold my Palantir and I bought Bitcoin. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below, especially what your ideas are about why Palantir bought some gold. Hope you enjoyed this video and hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you in tomorrow's video.